Welcome, listeners. Tonight, we invite you to step into the unknown, a world just outside the boundaries of reality, a world where time twists, shadows linger, and places long forgotten demand to be remembered. In this episode, we uncover three unsettling tales: a village that vanishes as quickly as it appears, leaving behind only questions, a town that prospers under the weight of an unholy ritual, and a carnival where the lights never dim, but neither does the terror. So settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely. For these are the places you'll find only when you're not looking for them. Places that may be closer than you think. Let's begin. The Vanishing Village. I wasn't supposed to be on that road. The GPS had rerouted me due to an accident, leading me into a maze of winding country lanes surrounded by thick forests. The late afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that crept across the cracked asphalt. My unease grew as the miles stretched on without a hint of civilization. Then I saw it, a wooden sign, weathered and leaning, that read, "Welcome to Dunharrow." I nearly missed it, a turnoff hidden between overgrown hedges. Curiosity, or maybe desperation, compelled me to take it. The road narrowed, and the trees pressed in on either side, creating a tunnel of foliage. My car's headlights cut through the encroaching darkness until suddenly the forest opened up, revealing a quaint village nestled in a valley. Dunharrow was picturesque, the kind of place you'd see on a postcard. Cobblestone streets wound between charming cottages with thatched roofs. Gas lamps glowed with a soft amber light, and flower boxes burst with vibrant blooms. It felt untouched by time, as though I'd stumbled into a preserved piece of the past. Relief washed over me. Finally, a place to stretch my legs and maybe find someone who could help me get back on track. I parked in the village square near a fountain, a carved stone piece depicting a woman pouring water from a jug. The sound of the water was soothing, masking the eerie silence of the town. There were no cars, no voices, no sign of life. Still, the lights were on, and the place didn't feel abandoned, just still. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing down the empty streets. No answer. A door creaked nearby, and I turned sharply. A man stood in the doorway of what looked like a bakery. He was middle-aged, wearing a simple shirt and apron, his face lined with years of hard work. His expression was neutral, almost wary. "You're not from here," he said. It wasn't a question. I shook my head. "No, I got lost. My GPS sent me this way. Is there somewhere I can get directions?" He hesitated before nodding. "Try the inn, down the road, past the general store." I thanked him, but he didn't respond, retreating back inside and shutting the door firmly behind him. As I walked through the village, I noticed curtains shifting in windows, shadowy figures watching me from within their homes. It felt like I was being studied, judged. The inn was easy to find. Its sign swung gently in the breeze, reading, "The Lantern's Rest." Inside, the air was warm, scented with wood smoke and something sweet, like honey. An elderly woman stood behind the counter, her gray hair pulled into a neat bun. She greeted me with a kind but measured smile. "You've come to Dunharrow," she said, her voice soft but with an edge of sadness. "By accident," I replied. "I was just passing through. I'll leave as soon as I can." Her smile faltered. Few leave Dunharrow willingly. The statement sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer directly, instead handing me a key. "Room 3, upstairs. It's late. Rest first." Against my better judgment, I accepted. The room was simple but comfortable, with a window overlooking the village square. As I lay on the bed, exhaustion took hold, and I drifted off despite the unease gnawing at me. I woke to a sound like whispering wind, faint but persistent. Pulling back the curtains, I saw the square below cloaked in an otherworldly mist that hadn't been there before. Shapes moved within it, indistinct and fleeting. Heart pounding, I decided to investigate. The village was transformed. The warm glow of the gas lamps now flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows. The mist clung to the ground, swirling around my feet as I walked. I wasn't alone. Figures emerged from the haze, villagers with hollow eyes and expressions of despair. They murmured as they passed, their words unintelligible but filled with urgency. Near the fountain, I saw the elderly innkeeper. She seemed solid, more present than the others. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Dunharrow is cursed," she said, her gaze distant. "Long ago our ancestors made a pact to protect the village from invaders. They called upon forces they didn't understand. The price was steep. Dunharrow would remain safe but hidden, only appearing when the veil thins. Those who stumble upon it are caught between worlds." "Caught," I echoed. "What does that mean?" Her expression darkened. "Some are trapped forever. Others, like you, have a chance to leave if you find the way before the village vanishes again." My stomach churned. "How long do I have?" She shook her head. "Not long. The mist is the first sign. Soon the village will fade, and with it, anyone still here." Panic set in. "How do I get out?" She pointed toward the forest. "Follow the path through the woods. Do not stray, no matter what you see or hear." Without hesitation, I ran. The trees closed in around me as I plunged into the forest, the path barely visible in the dim light. The whispers followed, growing louder, turning into voices that called my name. Shadows darted between the trees, and twice I nearly veered off course, drawn by fleeting glimpses of people I thought I knew. Then I saw it, a shimmering barrier at the end of the path, like heat rising off pavement. Beyond it, I could see the modern world, my car, the highway, freedom. Summoning all my strength, I sprinted toward it, the voices and shadows closing in. I broke through the barrier and stumbled onto solid ground. Turning back, I saw nothing but an empty road and dense forest. Dunharrow was gone. Later, I searched online for any mention of the village. What I found were scattered accounts from people like me, travelers who'd stumbled upon it and escaped. Each story was eerily similar, yet no one could ever find it again. As I read, one detail stood out. Every witness reported feeling compelled to return, despite the danger. Even now, I'm haunted by dreams of cobblestone streets and mist-shrouded figures. Part of me wonders if Dunharrow is still out there, waiting for its next visitor, and if I'd be able to resist its call should I ever encounter it again. The town's ritual. The first time I drove through Windermere, I thought it was the most perfect place I'd ever seen. The streets were lined with vibrant flowers, the storefronts gleamed with fresh paint, and every house had a well-tended garden. Even the people looked too good to be true, smiling and waving like something out of an old postcard. I was passing through for work, sent to audit the town's finances for a state review. Windermere had a reputation for being unusually prosperous. The records showed no dips during recessions, no signs of struggle. It was a statistical anomaly, and my job was to find out why. My first day in town, I stopped at a diner for lunch. The waitress, a woman in her 40s with a kind smile, seemed overly interested in my reason for visiting. "You're not staying long, are you?" she asked as she poured my coffee. "Just a couple of days," I replied, glancing at the unease that flickered in her eyes. "Good," she said quietly. "Windermere isn't the kind of place you want to get too comfortable in." Her words lingered with me as I left the diner, but I brushed them off as small-town paranoia. Yet, the more I dug into Windermere's records, the more I noticed how flawless everything seemed. Too flawless. The town's finances were immaculate. Taxes were always paid on time, businesses never failed, and public projects were funded without issue. Even more bizarrely, there were no reports of crime, no hospital records of serious illnesses, and no natural disasters. Windermere was perfect, unnaturally so. That night, as I worked late in the small motel where I was staying, I heard something odd. A low, rhythmic chanting carried through the air, faint but insistent. I opened my window, straining to listen. The sound was coming from the woods at the edge of town. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the source of the sound. The night was eerily quiet except for the chanting, which grew louder as I approached the tree line. The beam of my flashlight danced over the undergrowth as I moved deeper into the woods. Then I saw them. A circle of people, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of a bonfire. They wore plain clothing, their heads bowed as they chanted in unison. At the center of the circle stood an altar, crudely fashioned from stone. On it lay a small animal, a lamb, its eyes wide with fear. My stomach turned as I realized what was about to happen. I stumbled backward, stepping on a branch that cracked sharply under my weight. The chanting stopped. Dozens of heads turned toward me, their eyes reflecting the firelight. My heart raced as I turned and bolted back toward the motel, the sound of footsteps crashing through the undergrowth behind me. I made it back to my room and locked the door, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. Minutes passed, then hours, and no one came. Eventually, exhaustion overtook my fear, and I fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, I debated leaving Windmere altogether. But the rational part of me insisted that I'd misinterpreted what I'd seen. Maybe it was some kind of bizarre tradition or reenactment, something harmless. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of those eyes reflecting the firelight. At the town hall later that day, I met the mayor, an older man named Richard Gaines. He was everything you'd expect from a small-town leader, charming, charismatic, and exuding an air of authority. "We're proud of Windmere," he said, offering me a firm handshake. "It's a special place, and we work hard to keep it that way." "I've noticed," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Your records are remarkable." His smile didn't falter, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a warning maybe. "Remarkable, yes, but nothing in life comes without sacrifice, wouldn't you agree?" I nodded, unsure how to respond. That word, sacrifice, echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. That night, the chanting returned. This time I stayed in my room, heart pounding as I listened. The sound was fainter, as though it were retreating deeper into the woods. Despite my fear, curiosity gnawed at me. I needed answers. The following day I stopped by the diner again. The waitress was there, her expression guarded. I decided to take a chance. "I heard something in the woods last night," I said, keeping my voice low. "Chanting. Do you know anything about that?" Her face paled, and she glanced around nervously. "You should leave," she whispered. "Tonight if you can. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." Her words chilled me, but they also fueled my determination. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I returned to the woods. This time, I was prepared, carrying a camera and recording equipment. If something was happening, I wanted proof. The chanting led me deeper than before, the trees growing denser, the air colder. Finally, I reached a clearing where a larger group had gathered. The bonfire blazed higher, casting dancing shadows over the crowd. This time, it wasn't an animal on the altar. It was a man. My breath caught in my throat as I watched. The crowd's chanting grew louder, more frenzied. The man on the altar was sobbing, begging for mercy, but no one listened. A hooded figure stepped forward, holding a knife that gleamed in the firelight. I couldn't look away as the blade descended, silencing the man's cries. I stumbled backward, nausea overtaking me. This wasn't just a ritual, it was murder. My foot caught on a root, and I fell, the sound drawing the attention of the crowd. Their chanting stopped, and once again, dozens of eyes turned toward me. "You shouldn't be here," a voice said behind me. I turned to see the mayor, his face impassive. "But now that you are, you'll need to understand." Two men grabbed my arms, dragging me into the clearing despite my protests. The mayor stood before me, his expression grim. "Windmere's prosperity is no accident," he said. "Long ago our ancestors faced famine and ruin. They prayed for salvation, and something answered. It offered us protection, wealth, and safety, but at a cost." He gestured to the altar. "Every year we must offer a life. In return, the town thrives. No sickness, no poverty, no misfortune. The chosen are honored for their sacrifice. Without them, Windmere would fall." "This is insane," I spat. "You can't just let people die to keep your town afloat." "It's worked for over 2 centuries, he replied calmly, "and everyone here understands the importance of the ritual. No one fights it. No one leaves." "Why not let people leave?" I demanded. His gaze hardened. "Because outsiders talk, and you've seen too much." I struggled as they dragged me toward the altar, panic overtaking me. But then, something unexpected happened. A voice called out from the crowd. "Wait." It was the waitress from the diner. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. "He doesn't belong here. Let him go." The mayor hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "You would take his place?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes." For a moment there was silence, then the mayor nodded and the men released me. The waitress approached me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Run," she whispered, "and don't look back." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran through the woods, the chanting resuming behind me. When I reached my car, I drove without stopping, the sound of their voices echoing in my mind. I've never gone back to Windermere, but I can't forget what I saw. Sometimes I dream of the waitress's face, her final words haunting me. Windermere's secret remains safe, but I'll never forget the price of their prosperity. The Eternal Carnival. The first time I drove past Merryweather, it seemed like any other sleepy, small town. White picket fences lined the streets, kids rode their bikes under the late afternoon sun, and the faint smell of fresh bread wafted from a nearby bakery. Nothing about it suggested the horrors I would later uncover. I was traveling for work, taking the back roads to avoid traffic, when my car's engine decided to give up right on the outskirts of town. With no cell service and the nearest help miles away, my only option was to walk into Merryweather and hope for a mechanic. The townsfolk were kind enough. An older man named Henry, who ran a gas station, offered to look at my car. "Might take a day or two to get the parts," he said. "You're welcome to stay at the boarding house. We don't get many visitors, but we'll take care of you." Grateful for the hospitality, I accepted. The boarding house was a quaint two-story home run by a cheerful woman named Clara. She gave me a room with a view of the town square, where a massive Ferris wheel loomed against the sky. It struck me as odd. A Ferris wheel in the middle of town? But I figured it was some kind of local landmark or decoration. As night fell, the Ferris wheel lit up in vibrant colors, and the faint sound of carnival music drifted through the air. Curious, I stepped outside to get a better look. That's when I noticed the transformation. The quiet streets of Merryweather had come alive with garish light and sound. Carnival booths lined the square, offering games, prizes, and fried treats. Rides whirred and clanked, their mechanical symphony blending with the laughter of the townsfolk. But there was something off. The laughter sounded hollow, forced, like actors in a play struggling to stay in character. "What's going on?" I asked Clara, who stood beside me, her face unusually pale. "It's just the carnival," she said with a strained smile, "a Merryweather tradition. You should join us. Everyone's expected to." "Expected?" Her smile faltered. "It's important. Just have fun. That's all that matters." Her tone unsettled me, but I followed her into the square. The carnival was in full swing. Men and women in outdated clothing laughed and cheered as they played games and rode the attractions. Children ran in circles, their faces frozen in unsettling grins. The smell of cotton candy and popcorn was thick in the air, almost cloying. I wandered through the crowd, trying to shake the growing unease in my chest. It wasn't until I passed a young woman on the Ferris wheel that I realized what was wrong. She was smiling, but her eyes were wide with terror. She gripped the safety bar so tightly her knuckles were white. When our eyes met, she mouthed a single word: "Help." Before I could react, a man in a striped suit appeared out of nowhere and grabbed my shoulder. "Enjoying the carnival?" he asked, his grin unnervingly wide. Yeah, it's great," I stammered. "Good. We like our guests to be happy," he said, his grip tightening. His eyes bore into mine, dark and empty. Then he released me and vanished back into the crowd. I found Clara near a popcorn stand, her face pale and drawn. "What's going on here?" I demanded. "This doesn't feel right." Her eyes darted nervously. "Not here," she whispered. "Meet me at the boarding house after midnight." The rest of the night was a blur of garish lights and eerie laughter. I tried to avoid the man in the striped suit as much as possible, but his eyes seemed to find me no matter where I went. Finally, I made it back to the boarding house and waited for Clara. When she arrived, she looked like a different person. The cheerful mask was gone, replaced by fear and exhaustion. "What is this place?" I asked. She sighed, sitting heavily in the chair across from me. "Merryweather wasn't always like this. Decades ago, it was just a normal town. Then Henry Merryweather, one of the town's founders, decided he wanted to make it a happier place. He loved carnivals, thought they brought people together. So he built one, right here in the square. She paused, her hands trembling. At first, it was wonderful. People came from miles around to enjoy the rides and games. But something changed. Henry. He became obsessed. He said he wanted the happiness to last forever. And somehow, he got his wish. What do you mean? One night, the carnival didn't shut down. It just kept going. At first, we thought it was a glitch or a prank, but then people started disappearing. Those who tried to leave, those who refused to participate, gone. Her voice broke and she wiped at her eyes. We realized we were trapped. The carnival had changed. It wasn't just rides and games anymore. Something darker had taken over. Something that fed on us. During the day, we can live our lives, but at night, we're forced to attend. We have to smile, laugh, pretend we're having fun. If we don't... She didn't need to finish the sentence. The memory of the woman on the Ferris wheel flashed through my mind. Why don't you fight it? I asked. She shook her head. You don't understand. It's not just the carnival. It's everywhere. It's in the air we breathe, the food we eat. It's inside us. And it's watching. Always watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of carnival music drifted through the air, and I could hear the faint laughter of the townsfolk as they played their parts. I wanted to leave, but Clara's words echoed in my mind. Could I even make it out? The next morning, I tried to ask Henry about the carnival, but his cheerful facade quickly turned to anger. We don't talk about that, he snapped, his friendly demeanor evaporating. You're a guest here, don't forget that. I spent the day wandering the town, looking for any clue that could explain what was happening. Every resident avoided my questions, their smiles forced and strained. By the time night fell, I was more determined than ever to escape. As the carnival lights flickered to life, I slipped out of the boarding house and headed for the edge of town. The air grew heavier with each step, and the sound of carnival music followed me, no matter how far I went. Then I saw it, the man in the striped suit standing at the crossroads. Leaving so soon? He asked, his grin as wide as ever. I didn't answer. I turned and ran, my heart pounding. But no matter which direction I went, I always ended up back in the square. The Ferris wheel loomed above me, its lights spinning like a hypnotic wheel. Clara found me near the fountain, her face pale. You can't escape, she said. No one can, not until the carnival gets what it wants. And what is that? I demanded. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked back toward the crowd, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As the night wore on, I began to notice something. The carnival wasn't just a place, it was alive. The lights flickered like a heartbeat, the music changed in time with the crowd's mood, and the rides, they seemed to move on their own. It wasn't Henry's carnival anymore, it belonged to something else. By dawn, I was exhausted. The townsfolk dispersed as the sun rose, their faces hollow and drained. I returned to the boarding house, defeated. Clara met me in the kitchen, her expression grim. You need to leave, she said. Tonight, when the carnival starts, head for the woods. Don't stop no matter what you hear. It's your only chance. That night, I did as she said. The carnival roared to life behind me as I sprinted into the trees. The music grew louder, the laughter more distorted. Shadows moved in the corner of my vision, and I felt the air grow heavier, suffocating. But I didn't stop. I ran until my legs gave out, and the sounds of the carnival faded into silence. When I finally looked back, the town was gone, swallowed by the night. I don't know how I escaped, but I'll never forget Merryweather. Sometimes, I hear faint carnival music in the distance, and I wonder if it's calling me back. I wonder if the carnival ever truly lets anyone go. Three towns, each hiding a darkness beneath their surface. A village that vanishes with its secrets, a community that thrives on sacrifice, and a carnival that traps its people in endless revelry. These stories remind us that even the brightest lights can cast the deepest shadows. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into the strange and unsettling, let us know. Your thoughts and stories are always welcome in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, because there are always more mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and beware of what lies just beyond the light.